This episode of the program is presented by Novig, the peer-to-peer sports prediction market with no house, no hidden fees, and the best odds in the game. Whether you're a casual fan or a sharp trader, Novig lets you play smarter, win bigger, and make sports picks in a whole new way. And it's available in over 35 states. Learn more at novig.us/Woj and use code the program for a match up to $100 on your first purchase. Hey everyone, I'm Adrian Wojnarowski, the general manager of the men's basketball program at St. Bonaventure University. It's been just about a year since I left ESPN, retired from media to take on something completely different, being the GM of the men's basketball program at my alma mater. And it's been a year of learning. And this show, the program with Woj, is going to be an exploration. My own is I'm trying to pick the brains of some of the smartest people, smartest team builders, and those around team building in all sports across the world, not just the NBA, not just college, not just the men's side, but finding those who are doing it in innovative ways, who are having great success. And that's what the program with Woj is going to be. So looking forward to bringing you along on this journey with me. But I want to start with somebody that I've got a lot of history with. We've been together. We were together at Yahoo. We were together at ESPN. And Jonathan Givony, the founder of DraftExpress. It is the preeminent player evaluation, player database in basketball. And Jonathan, really is at the forefront of how American college teams are using the international marketplace to build their rosters. Those are conversations Jonathan and I have had a lot of over the last year. And then we continue that here on the first episode of the program with Woj. So, Jonathan, 1 year ago, almost to this week, I had left ESPN. I came to see you in Manhattan, and you and I are walking around Central Park, and I asked you probably one very simple question among a lot of questions: what the hell am I doing now? How do I do this? And we were off.
My 9-year-old still calls you the popcorn guy. We went to go pick him up at his school and took the subway back. And I still have that photo on my phone. And once in a while I ask me, hey, when is the popcorn guy going to send us more popcorn? That's what you're known for in my household.
That's actually not a bad thing to be known for. So Jonathan, we spend a lot of time, you and I did it for years together at ESPN, and now in a very different role for me as I'm trying to learn in my role at St. Bonaventure, recruiting international players. You've been at the forefront of player evaluation, of really seeing how this has accelerated in recent years, especially with NIL and now rev share. Let me ask you this simply, Jonathan. The schools who are doing it well and building their rosters globally, what do you see out there among the people and the programs that have figured this out?
I think the schools that are doing well on the international front are the schools that are also doing really well on the high school front and in the portal. And in terms of retention, I think you have to look at it from a global perspective. And I just think it's not, about where a guy is from in the world. I just think it's a mindset of how you go about evaluating players, how you go about recruiting players. I do think that a lot of schools now forget about a little bit about the recruiting element of it. They just think they can come in and offer players, the most money at the last minute and get guys that way. But I do think that the top players, they want to feel that connection to the program from an early stage. They want to know that that coaches are going out and watching them from an early age and doing the research. And I think that that's an area that, that the best schools really excel at, is in knowing everything about a player, is from a very young age, getting to know them on a personal level, getting to know their family, gathering all the intel, watching as many full games as they can, both live and on film, and not just going off a highlight reel or just recruiting player off, hype on Twitter or, some rating that they have, in some analytics model. I think that stuff can be helpful, but I think that the best programs are the ones that are doing the most thorough job, that are approaching it in a similar way to how NBA front offices evaluate talent and draft players and build those files over the course of years. And I think a lot of schools are still figuring out how to do that because these guys they're coaches first and foremost. I mean, that's what they grew up knowing how to do, and we're forcing a lot of these guys to go from being coaches to being general managers and scouts and negotiators. And I think that's really challenging for a lot of these people. And that's why we're seeing so many people hire, folks like you to help, with that process. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the coming years.
No, and you said it there, Jonathan, and getting over and spending time around players and seeing them in their environment and the folks around them. And so much of it for us at Bonaventure, we spent a lot of time overseas in the course of last year, and we thought there was a recruiting edge for us to go to Europe, to go to Canada. We have two players from Italy, Achille Lonati, Andrew Osasuni, Ilya Ermakov from CSKA Moscow, and then three Canadian players, two in the portal, one high school from Canada, which obviously for us regionally at St. Bonaventure is our backyard, and it's really important for us. But especially early on, Jonathan, I tried to lean on what I felt would be my strengths at it, and that was gathering information, being a reporter. And I lean heavily on our coaching staff on evaluations, and that's something I'm learning to figure out, trying to project players who can play in our league in the Atlantic 10, where we need high major talent to win. But I think, though, the one thing that I did feel comfortable with was the makeup, and having been around so many great players and programs and how they worked together in the NBA. But Achille Lonati was probably the guard from Milano who had a lot of success with their national team. Being able to be around him, going to scout him in Belgrade, going to Milan to meet with his family and him, and seeing the facility he walked into every day, and how professional that environment was. And, I always remembered R.C. Buford in San Antonio. We talked about Manu Ginobili, and he would always tell Manu, I want you to bring that Argentinian national team culture to our program with the Spurs. And that's how I felt with Lonati, was that he had been in such great environments, under the great Ettore Messina in Milano. And then, he had tremendous success with their national teams. It's kind of a golden age of Italian basketball at that age. And you just saw the intangibles with him, and we've seen it with him on campus. And so that for me was what I leaned into, was trying to be a reporter and being there, just physically going there and building a relationship with him. And then kind of late, you're trying to hold off high majors. You're trying to hold off schools who might have more resources than you. But have you built that relationship? And I think you're right. Physically being there, Jonathan, makes a huge difference, because you're going to learn about the player. And more than that, you're going to, you want to have a sense of who will do well in your environment at Bonaventure. We got him on a visit He didn't visit any other schools. We got a commitment.
Yeah, and those are the type of things that don't show up in a highlight reel, and they don't show up in a synergy dive. I mean, I'm someone that uses synergy quite a bit, and the 50 clips that you see offensively and defensively, they don't tell the full story. And so much of recruiting in college basketball now happens so late. A player enters the portal, and he wants to make a decision in the coming week, and so you need to decide almost that day, how much money do you want to offer? Do you want to bring him on a visit? And I think that's where doing the prep work in advance, months in advance, knowing who's going to be in the portal and what do we think about that guy? What is his track record? Achille Lonati, when he played at the under 16 European Championship, he was up and down in the early group stages, but he came alive in the biggest moments, late in games, in their biggest moments. And that is a key attribute that we saw from him at every level of competition. At the FIBA Under 17 World Cup, they're down by 12 points to Australia in the fourth quarter. And who shows up and makes a ton of big threes and late in the game and then overtime? It's Achille Lonati. And that's a characteristic that you're not necessarily going to see unless you've studied his entire body of work and you get to know him as a human being. And you see what makes him tick. We saw that again at the Under 18 Eurobasket in Serbia. Wasn't having a great tournament until, boom, they play against Serbia. Right. And he has his best game in the most important moments of his career. And if I'm a college coach, that's the kind of player that I want, that kind of character. Those intangibles that you spoke about. And I think that that's an area that people miss a little bit at times in the college recruiting. And they're hoping to get lucky because they're, in the past, okay, it was just a scholarship. Okay, not a problem. If the guy doesn't work out, we'll run him off and we'll move on to the next guy. But now there are real stakes, like if you're paying $100, $200, $500, $1 million, whatever it is, you better make sure that you're getting real value for that money. And that's where I think it's going to be really interesting this year because people think you just spend, and that's going to guarantee you wins. And it's not going to be that way in the college level, just like it's not that way in the NBA and it's not that way internationally. You have to find, you have to win on the margins. And I think it's especially true at your level.
No, absolutely, Jonathan. And I think, for us, you're trying to find value in deals and with players. If Achille, if Ilya Ermakov from CSKA, 6'6" point guard, Andrew Osasuni at center, who was, the anchor of Italy's under 20 gold medal winning team this summer, a big guy who's in here with us. If we're being honest at Bonaventure, if these players were at high-level high schools in the U.S., we may not have a great chance to get them. And so I think part of going internationally, and not just Europe, it's Africa, it's
South America,
which
Australia,
right, is
Asia.
It thins out a little bit. There's still lots of people recruiting there, but it does thin out a little bit. And so you want to go where there's less. And I think, the Far East. And Jonathan, what, the assimilation of these players into going from FIBA, it's, lots of freshmen don't impact anywhere at our level in college basketball. It takes a special freshman to be able to come in and play significantly right away. But they do.
American or international, I would say.
American or international. And the international player has even a bigger adjustment to make. It's
no question.
All the other factors away from the court. What have you seen about, I think, the expectations of the international player coming to the U.S. and obviously in the past they would stay and play for their club teams and they might not get a lot of minutes, but they could get paid something. And, some guys came over, many stayed. That's the NIL and now rev share has changed that dramatically where I thought, Jonathan, by the end of the summer, we were still recruiting into July and August. And we signed Andrew later in the summer. There were so many really good big men still available, guys who wanted to come play college basketball and could have played at the mid-major plus level. There were less spots available in real NIL money or opportunities to play than there were these guys wanted to come over, and many of them stayed. The supply and demand was interesting to me. I thought there were more good players who wanted to come than there were spots for them by the end of the summer.
Well, the pool has expanded dramatically, and it continues to expand daily, by the way. Now we're seeing that a guy like Thierry Darlan, who played in the G League the past few years, nobody really thought you could recruit a player who, played for G League Ignite, was in the G League for 2 years. And so every day we're learning about new avenues. I mean, I have, a college scouting service. We have 100 schools on it right now. Every single one, I would say 90 of the 100 tell me we want 20, 21, 22-year-olds. I had no idea that a player like Thijs de Ridder, who's 22 years old, averaged 10 points a game in the ACB, that guy could come and play at Virginia and get 2 years of eligibility. Johan Grunlo, I mean, he was in the second round of my mock draft the entire season, and he's going to Virginia also. He's a 20-year-old guy that never really dreamed about playing college basketball up until the spring came around. And the pool of bigs really thinned out, and Virginia were opportunistic enough to go and say, okay, who are the best bigs that we could go get? And so many programs did that now with these older players. And, agents are going to start pushing the envelope here saying, okay, my guy was drafted 2 years ago, but now he's out of the NBA. Could I send him back to college? What are the limits of the NCAA eligibility process? It doesn't feel like the NCAA really there's no guidelines here for who can play in college, right, who can't, could you go get a 23-year-old, that played summer league twice and graduated in 2021, maybe could get a year of eligibility. There really is there's no appetite on the NCAA side to say no to these players because they're so concerned about being dragged into more and more lawsuits. They're already, fighting on so many different places that they're waving some guys through. They say, okay, you played EuroLeague, that's fine. You're okay. You're 22. And so because there's some really powerful attorneys out there, that they've won so many times now that they've already set that precedent. And it's going to be very interesting to see, where do they draw the line here? What are the rules of college eligibility? Because, you went and grabbed Ilya Ermakov, as a 17-year-old out of Russia. I think a lot of the high majors are saying, that's not interesting for us. We want to go grab the 22-year-old who played for CSKA Moscow, and we'll go give him $1 million. There's more value to be had with a player who's a pro already, who's played in the ACB, in the EuroLeague, in the Euro Cup. And so we're all already building out our list of who are the 2004, 2005, 2006 born players that could potentially be recruitable for next year. And those are the guys that we're actively having conversations with right now.
Just like a coach looks for every edge on game day, Novig gives fans the edge when they make their sports predictions. With no house and no hidden fees, Novig delivers the best odds every time. It's the smarter way to back your instincts. Learn more about Novig, America's #1 sports prediction market at novig.us/Woj and use code the program for a match up to $100 on your first purchase. Jonathan, for us, finding what I'd call, and I would always hear this in the NBA, being around it with, teams and agents. They say, we want good partners, people who are going to work, agents who are going to work with the teams on the development of a player and, picking an organization when a player has some options. It might be as an undrafted player or somebody who's going to spend time in the G League and together they're going to work on the growth of that player. And the model is very similar for us now. And so what we want, and I think I certainly see it a lot in Europe where you have agents and representatives who want to represent that player for the next 10, 12, 15 years. They want to take them into professional basketball, whether that's the NBA, the G League, the Euro League, or any other number of professional leagues where guys can make really good livings overseas. They see the value of, with us and others like us at the mid-major plus level, of coming here, developing, growing, getting a chance to play sooner. And then the model may be that they transfer to a high major later in their career. I think the possibility of 5-year eligibility, I think will that'll make this an even more attractive piece where maybe you spend 2 years in the Atlantic 10 or the Mountain West or the WCC, and then you go to a high major for 3 seasons and chance to earn and play at a level, or maybe you stay here. Do you see a difference, Jonathan, at all about the mentality internationally versus in the U.S. of let's go to a place where we can improve, where we can play the money? Maybe we take a little less money on the front end to know that it's going to pay off in the longer run by that player coming in, playing, getting better. And I think we both know if you want to financially do well with rev share NIL, the pattern I think has shown come and produce at a lower level and then move up versus going to sit on the bench somewhere. And it's hard to get more financially when you have yet to show you can contribute.
Yeah, I think that this is an ongoing conversation that agents are having with their clients and with parents is how do we build out your career to maximize your long-term earning potential? It doesn't make sense to go be the 11th man, at a Power 5, sit on the bench, okay, you're making 300, 400 grand, maybe even more, but you're not playing. And then you need to transfer down and potentially even, very far down, not even to St. Bonaventure, but like to the lowest levels of college basketball with the hopes that like you're going to play well and then move back up. So now you've played for 3 schools over 3 years, and that's not a great career path for any young player. So we're seeing at the high school level, top 100 players committing to, mid and low majors with that understanding. Now, it's not uniform across the board. I think there's still players who are going too high. It's hard to turn down the allure of a Power 5 and to be on ESPN every night. And I think the Power 5s understand that you do need to build out a roster of, 13 players, and not all of them can be 5th-year guys, 4th-year guys that are hungry to go average 15 points a game and become NBA players. So people are figuring out, the balance there. And like you said, there's, this is where the relationships really matter. Going to Europe several times this summer, I kept hearing from agents saying, I'm so tired of the bullshit assistant coach from college basketball who blows up my phone relentlessly, just spewing lies and say, get me on a Zoom call. You waste so much time, Zoom call after Zoom call. Everybody's got the same exact pitch, the same exact video, the same exact graphics, the same empty promises. And they're saying, I'm going to cut those folks out, this upcoming recruiting cycle. There are 3 or 5 schools that I trust, that I want to work with. If it's a matter of taking a little bit less money, that's okay. It's such a waste of time, But I think that's where a lot of assistants, they struggle, is that like they want to shoot from the hip, and with this machine gun style of recruiting, just calling 15, 20 players at the same time every day, blowing up their phone, and then just ghosting them, like when they find somebody else. And people remember that stuff, and I think that if you're an assistant coach in college, you have to be cognizant of that, like it's not just about making the offer and getting the deal done. And then, the 19 players that you just toss to the side, they're going to remember that, like when it comes in next time to make a deal, to find a player with a guy that you really want. So I do think that people, like it's different, like the recruiting landscape has changed so much. It used to be that you had this 2 to 3 year buildup, right, from when a guy was 15, 16 years old, and then you kind of naturally drop off slowly as you get a better understanding of how good a player is and what level he fits and how you're going to build out your roster. And now everything is happening so fast that people are they're trying to figure out how do they go about the recruiting. And I think it's going to be really important to make sure that you don't burn those bridges and leave a bad taste in an agent's mouth.
Right, the agent or the player, because many of those players may end up back in the portal, and you may have the chance to recruit them again. And
Yeah,
so,
finishing in second sometimes isn't the worst thing. And I think a lot of coaches talk about that. There's something, I just want to finish in second and it's recruitment, and so because I know he's going too high
right.
and it's not going to work out. And I want to be there tempering November 10th when the first game of the season, the guy doesn't play. And now I'm calling the AU coach, say, hey man, I told you should have come to us, like it was a little bit less money. And so this is the strategy that a lot of these people are having now, which is really smart. Because this is just this is the nature of the game right now.
Jonathan, last thing, and we're going to do this in all of our podcast, the program with Woj, the future of international recruiting for American college teams. I wonder, are we going to see more NBA style front offices at schools who have the resources, where they're going to have scouting staffs, where they're going to have more than just the GM and assistant coaches, but really with resources being able to maybe recalibrate what a college staff looks like, and that it will resemble a little more of a front office. Is that within the horizon?
It's coming, and we're seeing teams hire analytics staffs too. I've had more calls over the last months asking about data plans, about APIs, about, just gathering all this information. We want to build our models. We want to figure out the portal. And, so it's really interesting. I never had that conversation with a college coach before. It was always with NBA teams building out their draft models, gathering, stats on, leagues from all over the world, every player. And now I didn't realize that this is going to become a market for colleges too. And, you're seeing, mid-major programs hire analytics people from the NBA saying, don't just be, like a nerd, in an NBA team basement. Come work for us. And you could be a town evaluator. You could be on the floor. You could be a guy that can do more than that. Let's round out your skill set. And I think that's very attractive to, some of the younger analytics people. They don't just want to be, working with a spreadsheet. They want to be making decisions. They want to be evaluating talent. They want to be on the road. They want to be recruiting. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of movement in the college front.
Jonathan, an honor to have you on the return of the podcast with me. We've done this a lot of times. Keep your phone handy. I'll be calling you probably maybe 2001 times between now and the end of the portal in the spring. But awesome to be with you, and I know I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Will. It was great to be with you, and I can't wait.
Thank you again to Jonathan Givony, the founder of DraftExpress. We'll see you next time on the program with Woj.